Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is CJ, the Populist New Yorker, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2021 New Jersey gubernatorial election. So I don't know how much I'm really going to be talking about this election going forward, as it's not really, as we're going to see, as nearly as competitive as the Virginia gubernatorial election, but nonetheless, if there are more developments in this race, I will certainly make videos to cover it. But this is one of the two major electoral contests, well, three actually, major electoral contests going on in 2021. Of course, we have the California recall, which is exactly 15 days away from today, as well as, of course, the Virginia and New Jersey governor's races. Now, New Jersey, of course, is a state that tends to vote very Democratic. Of course, we can just look back at the 2020 election results. Joe Biden won this state by around 15.7%. So it's a fairly safe Democratic state. It's not as safe Democratic as a state like Maryland or New York or California on the presidential level, but it certainly is a safe Democratic state nonetheless. Democrats win a majority of counties in the state of New Jersey, most of those consisting of counties in the New York metro by very large margins. That would include Hudson County, Essex County, Union County, Bergen County, and just all these counties over here in the northern part of the state in the New York metro. So presidentially speaking, of course, New Jersey is a state that is bluer than the state of Virginia. Unlike the state of Virginia, however, New Jersey has had a Republican governor as recently as 2017, and of course that was Governor Kristi. Kristi was elected in 2009, defeating an incumbent governor, and we'll take a look at that race right now, defeating incumbent Governor John Corzine, who was massively unpopular due to a number of political issues and problems that plagued his administration. And then if we go, of course, to 2013, Chris Christie was a very popular governor, particularly after Sandy during his first term, which cruised him to re-election in his second term. We saw Chris Christie won by a gigantic margin, especially for a blue state like New Jersey. He won by a larger margin than Larry Hogan won in the state of Maryland back in 2018 during his re-election bid. And I would argue that Chris Christie is slightly to the right even of Governor Larry Hogan. But he was able to win all but two counties in the state of New Jersey. He only lost Essex County and Hudson County. He won Democratic strongholds like Camden County, Mercer County, of course, and other counties generally in the New York metro area. The reason I bring these up is because, of course, after Chris Christie, we had Governor Phil Murphy win his first term as governor in 2017. Now, this was fairly easy for him. New Jersey was a Democratic-leaning state already. It wasn't too hard for him to pull this off, of course. Chris Christie had become notoriously and very rapidly unpopular in his second term, particularly after his run for the presidency. Of course, you look at the money spent in the race. Kim Guadagno, who was Chris Christie's lieutenant governor, spent less than half the amount of money as Phil Murphy, so naturally a huge money disadvantage there. And of course, this was seen as a likely, in some cases even a safe Democratic flip. And it makes sense. Kim Guadagno, besides the last two polls, had never polled over 40%. It was doing fairly poorly in the race, and it makes sense because Governor Chris Christie, the outgoing Republican governor, became super unpopular with voters, even though Guadagno had tried to shift the narrative. She was I'm not sure if Chris Christie's pro-choice, but she tried to bill herself as a very moderate Republican, like Chris Christie was, and voters didn't really buy it, and it mainly was because the voters had soured on the Christie administration, which she was part of, even though she tried to distance herself every step of the way. But going into 2021, we have Phil Murphy, of course, running for re-election. Again, if we look at his electoral map, that's not really accurate. Problem with New York Times electoral maps is they never actually update their maps. So this isn't actually 55.7, 42.2. That's not actually the margin of the vote. This is the real margin here. Phil Murphy got 56% of the vote to Kim Guadagno's 41.9. A little bit closer than the presidential election results in 2020, and just a little bit more Democratic than the presidential election results in 2016. Donald Trump in 2020 actually improved very slightly on his presidential margins in the state of New Jersey. Of course, Joe Biden also improved about 2 points or so. Donald Trump improved about 0.3. But if we look at the 2021 gubernatorial election, we have Phil Murphy and we have Jack Ciattarelli, who's the Republican challenger. Now, this was actually an interesting race, particularly in the primary, as we had three major contenders for the Republican primary nomination. Jack Ciattarelli, who was probably the most moderate of the candidates, and then you had Hirsch Singh, who was very, very pro-Trump, to a fault. Even among the Trump base, he, was almost as far-right and as Trump-supporting as it becomes. Jack Ciattarelli prevailed pretty convincingly when primary came. We can see up here that Phil Murphy in his primary actually got more votes than all the Republicans put together. And of course, Phil Murphy has had a large approval rating bump due to his response to COVID. Whether you agree with it or not, of course, New Jersey residents widely approve of it, particularly Democrats and probably independents as well. And that has propelled Phil Murphy in a good position to win re-election, almost a guarantee at this point in the race. Now the polls, Jack Ciattarelli fails to get even 40% of the vote. Phil Murphy, we only had one really close poll. For some reason, Change Research has actually been putting out a lot of close polls, not only in the state of New Jersey, but Virginia and Nevada. It's one of those states that's having a Senate race, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know why, because they're a Democratic pollster unless they change their methods, and of course there are a lot of undecideds. But Ciattarelli, perhaps maybe in a non-incumbent year, would be a fairly decent nominee for the Republicans to put forward. Again, it's always going to be hard, particularly in the sort of post-Trump era in Republican politics, for more moderate Republican candidates to actually get their names out there, because, a Trump Republican would not win in a state like New Jersey. A super evangelical conservative Republican wouldn't win in the state of New Jersey. If we look back, all the prior New Jersey gubernatorial elections, we've got 2 terms of a Republican and about 2 terms of a Democrat. And you kind of have this back and forth. In fact, if Phil Murphy wins his election in 2021, which he's very likely to, he'll be the first Democratic governor since the 1970s in New Jersey to actually be reelected. So, even with New Jersey's partisan slant, obviously in favor of the Democrats, Democrats haven't actually done that fantastic on the gubernatorial level. Of course, on the state legislature level of things, Democrats have total control of both chambers. I don't know exactly if it's a veto-proof majority or not, but nonetheless, Democrats dominate the legislature. So I really don't think it's realistic for Republicans to win any of those chambers anytime soon. It would be certainly an uphill battle. But ultimately, the reason why I probably won't cover this race too much is that as of right now, it's basically a safe Democratic race. Now, I don't think the margin is going to be... Oh, we're looking at the wrong election, but I certainly don't think the margin of the 2021 gubernatorial race is going to be like, anything more than the 2020 election. We'll probably see Murphy get 55, 56% of the vote, Ciattarelli getting 41, 42, something like that. Maybe like 42.5 or 6 or something like that. It'll probably do better maybe in southern Jersey. But I really don't think we're going to see an election this November that's very competitive. Now, of course, if things change, of course, I'll do a follow-up video, as I did with the California recall, which earlier on, a few months ago, I had made a video basically saying the race was not going to be very competitive because all the polling and all the data had told us that. And there really wasn't a groundswell to get rid of Newsom. And then in the summer, everything kind of changed on a dime, and June and July rolled around, and the nature of the race changed entirely. So certainly Phil Murphy could have a scandal explode in his face. There could be something out of his administration. He could make a colossal failure as governor. Something could happen. Or Ciattarelli might do something that really boosts him. But if there is a big, seismic shift in the dynamic, I'll probably do a follow-up video So again, Phil Murphy is in a very good position to win re-election. Obviously, the New Jersey electoral map favors him. Most of the most populous counties in the state are solidly Democratic. And again, especially in the era of Trump, a lot of these suburban counties have gotten more Democratic. Of course, on the contrary, some of the more rural southern New Jersey counties have actually gotten more Republican. Of course, in 2016, we saw pretty decent shifts in southern Jersey, some very drastically so, like here in Cumberland County, which in the 2020 election was pretty close. I mean, it actually shifted more Republican. So we saw wide shifts in southern New Jersey and the rural parts of the state. Now, I don't think by any means the state of New Jersey is trending Republican. I think it's a state that'll probably stay stagnant for one part or another for quite a while, as it has politically. It tends to be a safe blue state, and I think it will stay that way. Of course, on the governor's level, I don't think 2021 will be the year for Republicans to take back the governorship. Maybe in 2025, but I certainly think New Jersey is a lot more likely to flip. Virginia is a lot more likely to flip than New Jersey. Of course, that's my verdict on it anyway now. So that's my overview of the New Jersey governor's election this November. Phil Murphy has a very big advantage in this race. I would probably deem it a safe Democrat. Maybe not so much by margin, but based on the fact that Phil Murphy will 99.9% chance win, unless there is, of course, a big shift in this race. And, turnout matters with these races. These off-year elections don't have a lot of turnout. But, again, the polling of people in this race are mostly registered voters. That's interesting. I would have thought they were likely voters. So perhaps when we see more polls on likely voters, I'll do some more videos on this. But we'll have to see. But for now, I don't really think the New Jersey gubernatorial election is that competitive. Again, Chitterelli is a pretty decent nominee, but I just don't think it's the GOP's year to really take back this state. And I think Phil Murphy and the Democrats will have no problem winning re-election and retaining power in the state this November. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. Please leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss any more videos. As always, again, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.